Tonight's theme is something I'm sure none of you are interested in. And probably none of you have ever encountered it before. We're going to be talking about frustrated love. As you saw in the little skit, what often starts off as, in the case of a romantic relationship, everything very slam, bang, and intense, but sooner or later, the thrill fades, frustration enters, and soon turns to wrath. What are we going to do about that? It is human to long for lasting, satisfying relationships. Yet at the same time, when we notice what's going on around us and with us, we see that human beings are really having a tough time in any kind of relationship. What's going on in society today, particularly in the first world, and certainly you'll see it in New Zealand, is fragmentation in terms of social bonds, family relationships, romantic relationships. In fact, people don't even expect these things to last. You just have to do the best you can for the moment. And that standard is accepted as what is, and in the skit you saw what might have happened if the couple had survived the Titanic together. After 10 years, they're ready to take each other's head off. You might say a more civil way of handling the situation would be just to admit to each other that the thrill is gone, things aren't the same as when they started, and both persons should, move on if they haven't already done so on the side. This kind of response, which is so prevalent these days, is actually a form of cynicism. Look, we want to love, we want sustainable relationships, but don't expect things to work out. So therefore, be prepared to make the necessary adjustments. There's no harm in having loved and lost. It's a game, it's a battle. You get out of relationships, particularly romantic relationships. You get out what you can get out for a certain amount of time. As I said, this response is actually cynical. What do you want out of life? It doesn't get any better than this. Let's flash back to around 1850 in London. Unless you were of the aristocratic class, back then your lifespan as a commoner, or less, would probably be about 35 years. So, according to the way things were done in the middle of the 19th century, you were definitely married by the time you were 20, but you wouldn't have to worry about decades in the relationship, because one or both of you would probably be dead, by the time you're 35. So sociologists say that human beings now are facing a unique situation in which they long for lifelong relationships, but it seems that their psychological dynamics, their genetic hardwiring, doesn't allow them to fulfill such aspirations. So what to do? On the one hand, there's this longing for lifelong relationships that work out. On the other hand, there's the reality that all kinds of relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships, even work relationships between employer and employee, it's all so temporary. What to do? I'd like you to feel this paradox, a very troublesome issue. The longing for what will last and endure and be rewarding, companionship. I don't think anyone here wants to be alone. Nor do I think anyone here really wants to spend a whole lifetime of relationship shopping. You'd like to feel that you'll find your soul partner. You'd like to feel that your family that you're part of will stick together, even though statistics say no way. You'd like to feel like in the good old days when you take a job with a particular enterprise and stick with it all your life and advance through the ranks. But all those things have become non-existent now. So what to do? We cannot erase this longing for durable relationships, satisfying relationships. At the same time, what's happening is something else. Is there any solution that will solve this crisis? Some scientists, very seriously, not crackpots, but very serious scientists are suggesting that the only solution is a biochemical one. Administering to human beings neurochemicals that will help you to see your relationship in a fresher way. You may know that when you fall in love, there's so many neurochemicals that are dominating the situation. And some of them are more addictive than cocaine. That may explain why you've seen some persons who just can't resist falling in love again and again and again. You get a high from it. And then, of course, there's the ebb and flow of passions. How to sustain the emotional enthrallment, the emotional thrill, as well as the passionate dedication. Quite a few scientists are suggesting human beings haven't developed to the point where they can have sustainable relationships over many decades. Therefore, why not rely on neurochemicals? If you feel that, for example, your partner has lost that touch, has lost sensitivity, and is no longer fascinated by you, you could get some oxytocin spray, and yes, the spray does exist. And just spray it up your partner's nostrils, and suddenly he or she sees you in a brighter way. So many scientists are presenting that. Look, we've got to do something here. You're not going to erase the longing of the human being for relationships. Yet, at the same time, the relationships aren't working out. So why not rely on neurochemistry? Some biochemical supplements. There was a survey done in the UK. And men were asked this question, and women were asked the question. Question was, would it be acceptable to you if neurochemicals were used to enhance your relationship and perk it up? The answer differed according to gender. What was the male reaction, for the most part? Hey, whatever works, you know, like, just be practical, you know, whatever gets the show on the road, you know. And what was predominantly the ladies' reaction? You could probably guess. No, how do I know that he really feels this and it's not just the chemical supplements? No way. This is not genuine. Obviously, we're not advocating these neurochemical adjustments here. But I am just highlighting, I'm bringing this up to highlight a huge dilemma that we're in. We want to love and be loved, yet there's so many barriers, and those barriers are getting higher and higher these days. To our staff members here, because we do discuss these things amongst our staff. We know what's going on in the world. I often present to them the calculation for the global average for the duration of romantic feelings. There's statistics for everything these days. But somehow or other, someone crunched the numbers from all the different cultures and societies in the world and came up with an average for how long romantic feelings last. That means, average means some more, some less. But the global average is 17 months. You're flying for 17 months, more or less. And then, what to do? Should we become cynical? No. Should we resign ourselves to a life of relationship shopping, musical chairs, relationships? Bhakti Yoga recognizes this urge, this impulse for love. Yoga is so complete. It's not simply about flexibility and being limber. The full impact of the yoga system is about making the ultimate connection beyond the body and mind. So the Bhakti Yoga system, the Krishna conscious system, deals head on with our loving thrust, our desire to be in relationships. How does it do that? By recognizing that we'll never be satisfied in relationships based on physiology and psychology, relationships based on the body and mind. Because, as Krishna explains right in the beginning of the prime yoga text, Bhagavad Gita, we are actually not the body and mind. The body and mind are coverings over our non-material self. So what the Bhakti Yoga system presents to you is an applied spiritual technology for dealing with the real you. And once you deal with the real you, you can deal with the real someone else. The Bhakti Yoga adepts can trace all the world's problems to this lack of dealing with the real you and how you can really love. There's no need to deny our capacity for love, our urge to love, but we have to know what we're dealing with. Beyond just neurochemicals, beyond just flesh, beyond just the whims of the mind. Just think. Beyond our grappling with the body and grappling with the mind, how can we connect with the non-material self and establish relationships in that way. What Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita is about how to genuinely connect with all living entities. And also, most importantly, how to make the ultimate connection, the love supreme. The connection between the tiny particles of consciousness that are us and the supreme consciousness that we are part of. The bodies we are having, they're like different uniforms, different costumes. Why not love all living entities? Why just human beings? What you see today is the loving impulses of human beings being so curtailed and boxed up. If you can love or attempt to love a few persons, you consider yourself successful. But there are billions of people in this world. And what about other species of life? Why not love them? They may not be as smart as human beings. Their consciousness may not be as developed as human beings, but they're also living entities. The genuine yogi wants to love all living entities, while recognizing that human beings are special because they have a developed consciousness to have a discussion like we're having now. So basically, what we're proposing tonight is that we all need to get off the material platform. Especially for our relationships. Honesty is required. The yoga text will explain to you that how long do you really expect physiology and psychology to satisfy you? You can, so to speak, wring it and squeeze it all you want, but you're dealing with the limitations of matter. Matter is controlled by time and it's bound up with space. So rather than blaming the other person, the one on the other end of the relationship, no matter what kind of relationship, rather than blaming the other person, you're deficient, you're just not the same. You're just not providing the bang that you used to provide. Rather than being angry in that way and playing the blame game, why not recognize that you are a tiny living entity, tiny particle of spiritual consciousness, known in Sanskrit in the yoga text as the Atma, the non-material self. You're tiny, the other person is a tiny particle of spiritual consciousness. How can you expect the limited to satisfy you? So what the art, science, and culture of Bhakti Yoga is teaching us is, in order for the spokes of the wheel to relate to one another, they first have to relate to the hub that all the spokes are connected to. Water the tree at the root is another way of saying it. And all the branches will prosper, they'll blossom, they'll flourish. Without understanding our ultimate source, we can't properly deal with all the parts that come from that source. Material relationships cannot sustain, and they can't accommodate the intensity of our loving potency. So there's no need to blame others. We need a different way of relating to people. That different way, that spiritual way, doesn't mean you neglect the body. No. The body's our equipment, the mind's our equipment, you have to take care of it. But we take care of it for the purpose of enlightenment, the journey of self-discovery. In Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of relationships, the relationships all have the highest purpose. The participants in those relationships are partners in enlightenment. That is real love. In those relationships, the participants are aiding one another, encouraging one another, supporting one another in the highest goal, in climbing towards the highest spiritual awareness. That means, what is the relationship ultimate between the tiny particle of spiritual consciousness and the supreme consciousness? By just treating people as what they're not, treating them as simply they're the body and the mind, there's a tiny reflection of reality. Just like when a mirror reflects something, there's a tiny bit of reality based that reflection's based on. But it's not enough. Or if I make a shadow, there I made a shadow on the wall. There's a bit of reality in that shadow because it's based on my hand. But who would try to push on a relationship by interacting with the shadow? Quite frustrating. Similarly, the Bhakti Yoga text explained to us that the body and mind are shadows. Yet we're milking those bodies and minds trying to have a durable relationship. So the key to solve this situation is not neurochemicals, oxytocin spray up your nose. The key is knowledge of what is the real self and how to satisfy the real self in relation to the supreme self. This is the knowledge that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. I can appreciate the frustrations in relationships these days. You have so many pressures, economic pressures, social pressures. You have to show that you're someone and can do something in this world. You have to be a good entertainer. The last thing you want is to be dismissed in a relationship as being boring. You have to be known as constantly exciting. That's what the movies tell you. Without higher knowledge, we're subject to all this propaganda, which is actually destroying our well-being. So what I'm advocating tonight is our taking up relationships on the non-material platform. And that's not as hard as it sounds. The Bhakti Yoga text, which no one can put an accurate date on. The information cannot be dated accurately to any particular time. These Bhakti Yoga texts advocate that you make the ultimate connection and then you can successfully connect with everything that comes from that ultimate connection. The love supreme. A love that's not based on psychology and physiology. Of course, to enter into that arena of real love, we need to understand our non-material identity as part of supreme non-material identity. That goal is the real gift of the yoga system. So I don't want any of you to give up on love. But we need to educate ourselves how to actually love in a non-material way. So let me end by saying The next time someone says to you, I love you, you have a right to ask for clarification. Try it. Oh, you love me? Can you tell me what I am? Am I this body? I am this mind? Or am I something beyond the body and mind? Tell me exactly who is that entity that you love. When you add up the chemical value of someone's body, it's not worth very much. It's a lot of water. So ask someone the next time they say that, I love you. Say very good. Say very good. But who am I anyway? And who are you? Then if you're really bold, you can take it to the next phase. Not simply asking, who am I, who are you, but you say you love me. What exactly is it going to do for me, whatever I am? I know such questions are not socially acceptable. You should just be so happy that someone says, I love you. Right? Just get it while you can. I'd simply like to alert us all to the possibility that there is a higher level for relationships. There's an art, science, and culture for non-material relationships. Relationships with enlightenment as the goal. Relationships in which there's mutual support for being for real, beyond simply the body and mind, physiology and psychology. I heartily recommend the information in the Bhakti Yoga texts, such as Bhagavad Gita. And Bhakti is considered the topmost rung on the yoga ladder. The whole purpose of the postures, the breathing exercises, is to calm you down, calm us down so that we can then focus with concentration on what is the ultimate goal, the love supreme. I heartily recommend that we go to that topmost rung of the yoga ladder. And that will be the great success of our life. Thank you very much.